Hi everyone, it's Jerry. I have an excellent game to share with you from 1922. On the white end, Siegbert Tarrasch playing against Alexander Alekhine. This game won a Brilliancy prize. The opening we will eventually see is the Blumenfeld Countergambit. You're most likely going to have this gambit available to you against players who do not want to see the Nimzo Indian defense. I say this because if the queen knight is on c3 here rather than the king knight on f3, black would have the Nimzo Indian defense available to him. So, in short, when the king knight has been developed before the queen knight, you could really have your eye on this gambit. We continue with c5, met with d5, and now b5. This here signals the Blumenfeld Countergambit, a move that's available because this queen knight is not on c3, preventing the b5 advance. What's the big idea with this gambit? To strip away white pawns from the center. This is really a model game for this opening. We're going to see that white accepts this gambit, continues with d takes e, removing a black center pawn. However, it's immediately replaced. We have a 2-to-1 majority, and black has a half-opened f-file to work with. Good news for black. As soon as black is now castled, the rook is immediately activated. We continue with c takes b, and we got what we wanted. A big pawn center, sort of a 3-on-1. Now, one of the things I like about this game is that it's very easy for white to go wrong. And I say this from experience. I've played in a similar way as white does in this game, and I got pushed right off the board. There's one big idea here that black has, and it is to establish a pawn on e4, an alpha 0 pawn. If white doesn't factor in this idea, can easily be a disaster for white. Now, one of the reasons it's very easy for white to go wrong is because you could play natural developing moves remaining solid with your structure. That's not good enough. One of the moves white should be looking to play is e4. In this game, white continues with e3. This is what the computer wants to play. Knight c3, and pretty much in response to any black move, I'm pointing out the minor piece developments, in response to any of these moves, e4 straight away is available to white. White in this position is also prepared to meet the push with knight a4, next e3 challenging black center. Okay, knight c3 in this game, not played. Instead, solid, e3. What's white saying? I want to develop my king side. Okay, here we go with the black setup, bishop on d6, knight c3, castles. Even here, white wants to play e4. Computer suggestion, e4 right here. Not played. Bishop b2, bishop b7, b3, right? All seems very natural what white is doing. Keeping the foot on the development pedal. Ready to put the bishop on b2. Where else to go with this knight, right? This pawn taking away these squares. The setup here for black, very natural. Continues to develop. Both sides continue to develop. Rook on a to d8. The last piece is now in the mix. Opposite the queen, or how else might we describe it? Supporting a potential, a candidate passed pawn. This guy here, pretty close to being a passed pawn. Follow up, queen c2. And here we go with e5. This is already a critical moment for white. In the game, we have rook on f to e1. Black is already winning now. What's considered the best move? Okay, it wants to go with knight h4 with an eye on the newly weakened f5 square. And next, follow up with f3. Okay, this is not very natural. This is still a very good position for black, continuing here with d4. This is a really dangerous center, really a tsunami of pawns here in the center for black. Okay, white does not play with knight to h4. These two moves aren't the most natural. In this game, it is rook on f to e1. What's the big idea? White's looking to put this knight on f1. It's a stable square for the knight. It watches over this sensitive h2 square. Black is already winning here. We get that alpha 0 pawn, push the knight away, follow up knight e5, knight d1, anticipating pressure on the f2 pawn, and now knight f to g4. Bishop captures knight, knight takes bishop, knight f1, covering the h2 square, and queen to g5. Now I'd like to pause for a moment. I really want to draw your attention to these last handful of moves by black and point out just how logical they are. They flow very naturally. It all kicks off with this pawn being established on e4. So let me just backtrack for a moment and show you. Pawn on e4, step number 1, step A. Notice now how A permits B. This is a new move that's available with the pawn on e4. And notice how B permits C. The knight supports the knight g4 jump. This knight, by the way, from f6 is what I like to describe as a corked knight. Once you remove this cork, look at these new moves that are all of a sudden available to black. Two new pieces spring to life. After bishop takes and knight takes, we see how that move C permits D. Flows very logically here for black. Look at the aggressive posts for the black pieces. Look at the white knights. Rank 1 knights, not a good situation for white. Every black piece is really better than white's here. We continue with h3. Now a really nice maneuver by the knight. It goes to h6, has its eye on the f5 square, king h1, knight f5. From here, possible eye on h4, coordinating on g2. Also, the knight supports d4, allowing this unopposed light square bishop to be felt on the main diagonal. We have knight h2, d4. The pawns continue to roll. White continues here with bishop to c1. If you capture in this position, I mean, wow. This is, again, model game for this opening. Look at this now. Unopposed black center. 2-0. 5th rank pawns. All right. White does not want to see this guy spring to life, does not want to allow this pawn to have an opportunity to move. So he plays bishop to c1. Follow up d3. Talk about a big passed pawn, a connected passed pawn 2 steps away from promotion. Queen lands a check. King h8, no problem. Bishop gets back on this diagonal. Nothing happening here anymore. Pop quiz. How would you continue here? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, there's no one winning move here for black, but here is the best move. move played in the game, knight g3, check. The knight is poison. In the game, the king moves. If you take the knight, queen takes. What are we doing here? Got a mate threat on h2. How are you defending that? Knight f1's not going to cut it. Knight is captured. Mate next on h2. And if the knight goes to g4, well, don't forget, the rook is hanging. That's mate. Okay. Poison knight. King g1 in this game. Bishop d5. Queen a4. No man's land here. Some pressure on a pawn. So what? Here comes a check. King h1. A little defense here. No rush in this position for black. Just defend the a2 pawn in a spot now to form a battery if you need it. Queen a6. h5. Useful. Take away a square from the knight. The square is available now to the king. In comes b6. Another check here on g3. You could already consider pushing a little bit earlier in this game, but in this one, there's first a capture on b6, and now we get another check. We're repeating moves here for a couple, and in the end, he continues with d2. The rook is toast. Look at that. The knight and the pawn take away all squares from the rook. He's going to win material now. Completely crushed Team White. We have rook to f1, knight takes rook, follow up bishop to e6. Yeah, the king's out of this pin, but could still go in for the sacrifice. Bishop takes h3, pawn takes, exploiting the newly weakened f3 square. What are you doing about this? White tries knight g3, h4, trying to kick him away. In this game, white continues with bishop to f6. If you take with the rook, this allows queen takes rook. If white, instead of bishop to f6, captures this pawn, it's a mate in one. So white's idea here is to at least try and distract the queen, get her off of this g file so that rook takes pawn is not going to be mate. Bishop f6 is the try here, a desperate try. Simple queen takes bishop. And after knight takes pawn, rook takes h3 check, and white resigns. What are you supposed to do here? Completely gone. If you move to g2, it's a mate in 2 with queen f3 and rook h1 or queen h1. And the other color, if you go to g1, well, bishop h2 hits with check, and there goes the queen. Game over for white after rook h3. So, what did you think of this one? Anyhow, feel free, as usual, to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care. Bye.